All right. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into the questions. I think the first one is to Fionn. Based on the data that you have at LinkedIn, what do you see as the future jobs that's emerging to meet the needs of industry? And what are the learning or skills that's needed for these jobs to materialize?
I think one of the most important signs that we are seeing on the platform is that almost 40% of professional hirers, meaning that companies that are hiring for people, they're beginning to look at skills instead of just past experience or credentials. Because they are finding that it's very difficult if you just keep on fishing in the same pool of fishes. Like if you keep looking for the same people and same industry, you're actually not being able to grow fast enough. And we know that the pandemic has driven lots of technology evolution. Digitalization is a big theme, and we hear it again and again. There's actually not enough workers. So 40% of companies are beginning to look at skills instead of just past job, past industry, or just kind of job titles. They're beginning to look at what are the skills that I really need, apart from the hard skills. You know, like the hard skills that we are seeing are machine learning, because AI is real. So that skill is definitely in huge demand. Digital skills, definitely in huge demand as well. And thirdly, is how do you manage a flexible and a hybrid workforce? And that's something that is coming up that it feels like it's here to stay and it's going to stay for a long time.
Thank you. And that's very much in line with what Minister is saying, right? Really a much stronger focus on skills. Thank you. Okay, next question to John. At Dyson, as the Chief Technology Officer, how do you see jobs changing in maybe the next 5 years or so? And how would learning evolve to help prepare people for those changes?
Talk about the jobs in sort of broad terms. So if we look at research as a catalyst for learning and development, I think there's going to be more porosity between industry and university. That's going to be driven by the requirement to have the thought leaders being the lecturers, being able for people to really go deep into disciplines in order to research into fundamental phenomenon, scientific phenomenon, and then also then have an industrial application, because I think that the time to market for research needs to reduce as well, so we bring new technologies out there. So there's a depth point, which I think is going to be one of the things. The other thing for me is, we talked earlier about this analogy of unicorns. We need to create pastures for unicorns, because the unicorns of today will be the standard of tomorrow. So if we look at everyone left shifting in terms of the design process to get more upstream, to contemplate value-based decisions, we're looking for people for a breadth of understanding across both commercial, supply chain, technical and research principles in order to trade off and make product-based choices. So I think that requirement of having a breadth of understanding of multiple functions, as well as a huge depth across different types of role, is what we see as being the result in us as a company surviving. So in the next years, you're going to see so much disruption and change, and we see the path for a successful future through innovation and creating future products that are going to be very relevant. And in order to do that, we really need to bring in that capability into our teams.
I like that concept of that unicorn, right? It's someone who has deep functional expertise as well as leadership and breadth. Do you hire, how do you find these people, or do you train them so that they learn on the job?
So I think a combination, really. I think some people it comes naturally, but they're very rare. But equally, we can create an environment internally in Dyson for people to explore and to learn. And as we talk about failure, I think if I look into my career, that the biggest lessons I learned were a combination of the challenge I was set, and I had to improve my thinking and understanding to seek to try and get that challenge, but also on that journey, going through finding ways that didn't work, I probably learned the most formative lessons. So I think we as an employer can create those environments, potentially virtually, potentially in the future we'll see, simulation and simulated enterprise environments as well as product development environments, allowing people to see the impact on some of the decisions they make, right, and allowing them to fail even faster than they failed before.
Thank you.
Speaking of learning, I think I think the world has evolved so much from learning where I was in school to where learning is right now is so interconnected. So today, if as an employee in the organization, I get to decide on what is my desired change, and I then have learning pathways that aligns to the desired outcome I want to see. Apart from that, I get to see the social learning as well. I get to see what my colleagues or people of similar profile are learning. Maybe I'm missing out something. Maybe I'm telling myself I need to pick up skills in this area, but I'm actually should be also learning another skill that someone else is learning of similar profiles. And today, learning is a lot more interconnected. You get to develop your own desire of your career growth, and at the same time, you also get to see what others are learning. So learning is becoming a lot more interconnected, and it just brings a new, fresh ideas to you on how you should be learning.
Yeah. Thank you, Fionn. That really resonates because what we're trying to develop at SIM is our own internal learning academy called Learning at SIM. And our thinking is we want to give the ownership to each person to decide on what their goal wants to be instead of waiting for us to give them the opportunity. Then they can see the career pathways and make their own decisions to develop their skills. So if I can just shift a little bit, because we've been talking a lot about skills, even from the minister, I wanted to talk about mindsets, which also came up in the earlier session on the future of work. We hear that while people are hiring more for skills, other people say that we hire more for attitudes, things like curiosity, that growth mindset. What do you see as the importance of mindsets and how that plays in the hiring and learning space?
Yeah. I think that question came out earlier. What kind of mindset or what kind of skills that you want to see as one of the top skills? I think the two goes hand in hand. It's not one or the other. I think when you have a growth mindset, a curiosity mindset, you would naturally lean towards trying to figure out what other skills should I be picking up. And that skill is still essential. I think that skill is that collaborative mindset, that critical thinking, the ability to work together to solve problems. Say, for example, the pandemic or COVID-19. It's not just a health issue. It's not just a medical challenge. It's actually a political cross-border challenges. It's about how you work together. It's about how you it's about the supply chain issues. It's about sustainability of food. When people were concerned whether there's enough food on the table, that's why everyone was rushing to buy toilet papers. And it's real, because when a pandemic hits, it's no longer a single problem, but it's a connected problem. So I think skills and mindset goes hand in hand.
Thank you.
Yeah, to sort of build on that, I think for us, the things that make us Dyson is people being bold, being daring to do things in a different way, but doing that in an ever-increasing collaborative environment as well. So you can't just be an individual pushing with something. The products we work on are so connected in terms of the technologies used and their kind of relevance within the Dyson world. So we really need to find a way of balancing that boldness and newness and passion, as well as that person being, having humility to work as a team, to engage others, and really understand that. Quite a lot of it for us, for newcomers, is around the cultural fit. So people who want to have a stable role at Dyson with things that are predictable, they're not going to work really very well. So really for us, that fit is not there. We need to see the sense of urgency. I think that's a really important point in the slide I really picked up on, that for us, the time is always now. If you want to create the future, you've got to start on it today, or you had to have worked on it many years ago to be relevant and different. So I think having that sense of urgency in our teams, both with new people coming in, but also how do we keep our managers and leaders having the energy to want to change, to want to go out of their comfort zone. It's really, really important to create that culture.
And how is that culture created, and how does that learning happen to cultivate that sort of mindset and culture?
So when we've heard from James, his as the owner, the founder, and now the chief engineer, really his principles in terms of aspiration, in terms of problem solving, doing things differently, that's really at the core of our business. We want our people to be authentic. We want them to be pioneers. We want them to be different. And that resonates really from the top. And we look to hero it in our teams as we see it and really embrace that culture. With that also becomes, the downside potentially of that culture of areas that we as a management team can help to bring people together. Because you can be very strong in your culture, but you also have to be very aware of the impact of it.
Right. So it's about leadership. It really starts from the top. Okay, thank you.
Speaking of culture, I think leaders play such a huge role to create a culture where people want to come to work and feel happy to come to work as well. In LinkedIn, we talk about creating a culture, or we aspire. And the way we use the word aspire is because we know that this is a continuous journey. We aspire to create a culture based on trust, care, inclusive, fun, and transformation. And every word that we use there is so deliberate because we know that a culture where you have trust, that we aspire to create that culture of trust and care, allow people to fail. Because when you trust and care for each other, you can learn together. And when you do that, you can be inclusive as well. When you trust and care for each other, you naturally become a lot more inclusive because you want to care for that individual. And that fun element, because we want to have fun at work as well. You don't want to come to work and feel like work is laborious. And that fun element is actually really important in LinkedIn. And lastly, transformation. We actually encourage people to transform their career, transform in terms of what Moon said earlier in Singtel, to allow people to have different careers within the organization. And that's transformation. We want people to transform in what they're doing and contribute to the society.
Thank you, Fionn. I think that's so important for leaders to create that culture through these values. Can you share a bit about the learning at LinkedIn? How does that happen for your own people?
Yeah, I think it's multiple angles. I think learning is really from the top to every part of it. Like, in fact, we just had Career Week last week, where we talk about encouraging our people to think about the career that they aspire, so they are able to have learning path that help them to get there. And that's just one aspect of it. We have got learning program. There are different learning program. And you talk about Empower In. Empower really started because I was mentoring quite a few ladies within the organization. And naturally, there were a few common themes that come up. One, the lack of confidence. Secondly, the inability to speak up. Thirdly, having imposter syndrome. And I think it's very real. So as an organization, what do we need to do to actually create that environment so that people feel like they have a voice? They are not afraid to speak up, especially for the women. They are naturally a lot more careful in how they think about how they contribute to your organization. So if we can create programs like that so that we help the younger women that has just joined the workforce and allow them to be exposed to different leadership and create an environment so that they are able to support each other as well. That helps to enhance that learning environment as well. So I think learning is from multiple angles. It could be in person, it could be a learning roadmap, it could be something that we do on a regular basis. In fact, I think learning is happening every day.
I think for me, learning is listening and exploring. I think those are the two things. We encourage that very much in terms of our process as a researcher into product and into technology. You're being inquisitive, and that is really part of our way of working. We look to work on our core technologies and get very deep in terms of some of the learning, to the level of PhDs with universities, or the depth of discussion we have with our industrial experts who work on those technologies. But I think as well, it's been mentioned a number of times, is how does the core business adapt for the future challenge. And we can see that in many facets. So if we took our go-to-market teams, we're looking at more of a digital world in terms of how people can explore the products. We have a VR store where Dyson prospective owners can try the products and can understand about that. And that really, changes, the ask of some of those teams who might have worked in more traditional ways of marketing a product into exploring the potential of digital, working with different technologies and skill sets in order to really, disrupt the way we go to market to show about how the product works.
Thank you.
So we see it in many facets in terms of the process of developing things and really across the business as we bring in more, digital and other tools in order for us to, use data to transform how we work.
I think one thing that would be very interesting to all of us, I mean, Dyson, you are a pioneer in innovation. And as the Chief Technology Officer, can you just share with us, what is the process? How does a team work together to create an innovative new product? And what kind of skills or mindsets do you need to be successful?
Yeah, if we look really upstream, we kind of have a number of threads. So really, sometimes it's around, the key thing is what's the killer brief, what's the problem statement, what we're trying to solve. And it can become multifaceted. So it can be about the technology. How do we, develop that technology that brings a difference? It can be about the product. How does that product change people's behavior? How do we look at our owners and look at some of the things that they're not saying to inspire us for new ideas? So we really need a number of different expertise in that process. We need with people who are, focused on the mechanistics about how a product is used, looking for the unsaid gems of insights around their frustrations. We need people who are going to be deep into the technology. That technology now is increasingly integrated in terms of hardware and software and personalized experience. And so bringing those things together requires multidisciplines to work together. We need people then who balance out those requirements, because products and technology has a timeline, right? We need to get in there with relevance. If you take forever to solve this amazing problem, you won't be relevant. Because you'll be too late. So we have to balance out the time and the technology. And mostly it's about the value that we create to the owner. So how do we weigh up, some of those decisions in terms of how we interweave technology and product? Because people's expectation of a Dyson is it's doing something different. And it's doing it in a way that really adds value and benefits them. So the challenge for us as a multifunctional engineering team is how do we evaluate those factors and where do we place value on each area and how we then can accelerate those things to get to market.
And do you also do that in a hybrid environment globally, or is everyone housed in Singapore?
Yeah, we are very focused on campus culture. So we really want to bring to our employees that bring people together. We find that getting those different researchers or engineers or scientists around the table and encourage debate, insight, and collaboration is where we get that. We find that increasingly hard doing that remotely. So I think certainly from a research perspective, we see the most value when we get people together. So the challenge for us as employees is what's the reason to come onto the site? So we've invested heavily in our equipment. If we look at the kind of amount of equipment in terms of capability we have on all of our research sites, it's world-class. Ability to analyze, prototype, develop with digital tools, work with experts, is our key offer, but we've invested in the quality of the site. So we have places like St James's Power Station, our global headquarters, where it's got a huge amount of architectural focus to make the process of challenging yourself to come up with a new product a little bit easier because of the environment being so inspiring.
Physical environment also plays a part to encourage collaboration.
Yeah, we also look to bring some of those iconic pieces of technology. So we've got a car, our Dyson car, that we were inventing in Singapore. That's in the office, but we also have examples of engines, planes, inspiring pieces of engineering, because we really want to create that kind of aspirational environment, because we want people to come and do their best work, best equipment with the right people, and we really want to engage people in that collaboration and debate in terms of what the product will be.
Okay, thank you. And Fionn, perhaps you could share, how do you innovate at LinkedIn? You're always coming up with different products and solutions on your platform. How does that happen?
Yeah, we take a lot of signal from our job, from our members, I would say. I mean, if you look at our global platform, we have more than 850 million members on the platform today. And they are actually very active on our platform, right? And they naturally give a lot of feedback as well. And so by nature, the fact that we work with our members as well as companies that are using LinkedIn, telling us what they need, as well as members sharing with us their aspirations, we're able to actually create what we call an economic graph, whereby we have people on the platform, members, companies, schools, and jobs, as well as skills, knowledge and skills being on the platform itself. And this economic graph actually allows us to have real-time insights on what's required. For example, we're beginning to see that organizations are beginning to hire based on skills. And if that's the case, how do we empower that? How do we power that engine so that companies can find the people based on skills? And how do we help people to learn and acquire new skills? And by that, we then develop our product, which we call the LinkedIn Hub. And each organization is then able to pull that hub within the organizations to say, hey, I'm now empowering every of my employee to tell their employers, to tell their company, this is the career goal that I want to get to. This is where I see myself in my next job. How do I get there? And then we are able to actually see, if you want to get there, these are the skills that you need. And based on the skills that you have right now, what is the transferable skill? What is the next best action that you can take in order to reach that goal that you have? So I think LinkedIn is powerful in a sense of how we actually harness the data to actually keep challenging ourselves to produce product or to invent product that is relevant for companies as well as for our members.
Right. Thank you. So it's really listening to the needs of your members and your customers. Thank you. Okay, could I shift gear a little bit? I wanted to get your perspectives on our current workforce. We'll start with John. You know, other countries that you've worked in, what do you see as the strengths and the development needs of our workforce today to be ready for tomorrow? And how can they undertake learning to get themselves ready?
I think one thing we see in Singapore is a huge focus on technical skills and very, very educated individuals. And we see that being a really core foundation of being in Singapore. You have a huge amount of technical people. Technology has a high appreciation here and people with depth of skills. So if we think about the future need and our most successful people, what are some of those attributes that we want to aspire to, or how do we grow? Rather than talking about deficiencies, what makes our best Dyson leaders the best? A lot of it's around that ability to speak out and not being scared to fail. If I look at a lot of the times, I probably will ask the stupidest question in the room. And that's okay, right? Because a lot of other people are thinking that. So how can we have a culture that allows people to speak out more freely, engage in the conversation? Because we want to create leaders of the future. They have to be engaged in that dialogue. So they have to be prepared to fail, and they have to not worry about that. Equally, we really want to have people with a global perspective, really to understand where different countries are in the world in terms of the kind of problems they might have and things that might motivate them. So we think people who have traveled and had a global perspective really stand head and shoulders above the rest. The other thing as well is around that early stage innovation and research, where that truly is happening around in the world, the inspiration from art or through more softer type of skills is very, very important. So how do we give people more of a innovative, creative type leadership is, I think, the opportunity for Singapore in the future, but it's built on such a solid foundation. I think there's going to be a huge success.
It's about the softer skills, right? And attitudes, which I think we can certainly take on board and incorporate into our learning to prepare our future workforce to be ready. What about yourself, Fionn?
Yeah, so much about hard skills, which we talked about earlier, and John, you touch on that as well. And I think that you can't replace some of the hard skills that is essential. But I think the soft skill is what we covered a whole bit earlier. Like even in a Slido earlier, we talked about what are the skills that is essential for the future of work. And we hear a lot about the skill of the ability to learn, agility. We talk about problem solving. I think, the best people I've seen are the ones that is able to connect the dot and be able to solve problems. The one that is system thinking, not just thinking about their current job, but thinking about the current problems, but they think about they're ahead in terms of being able to see what could potentially go wrong and be able to prepare for the next best action. So I think, apart from the hard skills, is the soft skills of creative thinking, the ability to collaborate, the ability to solve problems. Those are the skills that is actually really essential.
Thank you, that's a great summary. Okay, so the next question, I'm going to address it to Fionn first, because you've got your 21-year-old daughter, right? So would you advise the younger generation differently from the older generation? And should different generations at different stages of career focus on developing different skill sets in thinking about the future of work?
I guess I can say that I have a younger person at home who is 21. I also have a husband that is over 60. So I'll term him as the older generation. So I'm kind of sandwiched in between. I think for the older workforce, some of them, not all, some of them do actually they actually impose upon themselves about the struggle with digitalization. I mean, there are some people that really struggle with adopting technology. And I think that's something that, we can all help. And if I were to advise the older workers is to not have that self-imposed belief that you can't learn those skills, because those skills is not that difficult. What you need to do is get your hands dirty and be able to go out there and pick up new skills, or even do reverse mentoring and learning from the new ones. As for the younger generation, you can see that tech comes very easily for them. They can switch from one window to another window, and they are very comfortable with tech. That's what they call like the native generation. They grew up with it, And for them, it will be more of the soft skills, I think, like what we talked about earlier, in terms of problem solving, critical thinking, the ability to collaborate. Resilience is probably something that they will have to pick up along the way. Not having the immediate answer because they are so comfortable with having the answer right now. Dealing with ambiguity, I think, is what we see a lot of young people that will struggle with those things. So we probably have to help them to learn how to cope in an uncertain world. And I think as they enter the workforce, as we keep on investing in our younger generation, I believe that we have something great ahead of us.
Yep,
I'm optimistic.
Absolutely. Thank you. And John, what about yourself? You're on the advisory board of SUTD as well, right? Any advice to the young people?
Yeah, no, I think it's very evident that the passion in young people in Singapore and the desire to be different and help. And I think it's how you nurture that versus maybe some of the aspirations. So there's always a challenge in your early career that you want to be CEO on day one, right? And the reality is it won't be that. We don't want people to lose that, right? That desire and passion and energy to want to do that. But it's how can we help people along the journey? And I think to the point made earlier is careers are less certain. There's not that path that you can talk about on the longer agenda. So we need to sort of constantly have that dialogue between industry and academia and people within our teams to show how they're all upskilling and how that's benefiting them as well as the team and the business. So it is a two-way constant dialogue to kind of continually assess where they are in terms of that learning and development. And that requires a lot of effort, really, to make those career paths that before you could lay out without you as a business having to know what they were because they were generic based on function. Now you don't know what those jobs are going to be. There's going to be new roles. But if you're continually focusing in upskilling or bringing innovation into your business and focusing on engineering yourself for the future, you're going to create those opportunities. But the opportunities are going to be more opaque than people would have expected, or we would have expected when we were growing up to take those roles. So I think the job for us is to narrate the story of development as leaders.
So, in the past, education and learning is front-loaded. You take a degree, you go off to work, and that's the end, right? And now we all know we need to upskill and reskill. For example, people in sustainability roles. I'll bet nobody graduated with a degree in sustainability. So we need to upskill on the job. So in the future, we need to bring learning and work closer together. So what do you see as the roles of lifelong learning institutions, such as ourselves, and industry and enterprises like yourselves, to bring learning and work closer together to help our people be successful?
Well, if I took at Dyson, learning, innovation, research, creativity is kind of the core of everything we do. And I think for us as a business and to be successful, you need to know where you want to drive depth and where you want to collaborate. So I think driving on certain, either functions or research or product areas is kind of where we would go naturally deep ourselves internally, because we're very, protective of our IP. But I think for more of that baselining across different industries, I think we would look to institutions such as yourself is to bring us a different perspective. Where do we baseline, and then how could you help to, cross-pollinate between different disciplines? Because in a way, competing with a company like Dyson, where innovation and research is the core, in certain areas we would look to invest in that as part of a long-term pipeline. But other areas where it's not maybe core to us is a great opportunity, I think, for collaboration and institutions to change. Equally, how can you help, through people's career journeys, to help at all those different stages on areas maybe that we would not invest in if we were focused more on early careers? Maybe there's a resetting of mindset, expectation, or something new that you could bring to the table.
Yeah, so at LinkedIn, we actually provide learning opportunities for every organizations and every job seekers as well. And that's actually really important point on how we go about doing it. Because actually, as I mentioned earlier, we have 850 million of our members on our platform. But at the same time, we also have jobs from companies that is posted on LinkedIn. And along with that jobs, we know what are the skills that are in demand. And because we know the skills that are in demand, we then know how to develop courses to meet the demands of the companies. And very often, you find that there continues to be huge shortage. Like there's millions of jobs that is still left unfilled because there's not enough of the people to meet the skills that the companies are looking for. So that's one thing. Coming to your question then is, how does organizations like yourself help and support the society as we constantly evolve? I think like what you're doing today is truly effective, right? I mean, to be totally integrated with the industry, knowing what the organizations are looking for and helping organizations to equip the next generation of leaders and workforce so as to prepare them for what the companies are looking for. And secondly, I would say that using our data and insights to actually help prepare. Because on one hand, it is good to actually be very involved with the companies. I think if you can supplement that with understanding of the trends of what's upcoming and supplement that with all the courses that is mobile or, being able to shop, is modular so that it's easy for people to consume. Those are the kind of learning courses that people would find it easy to digest.
Great advice, thank you. So it's really to understand what the gaps are on a macro level and then listen to each company to really be good partners to help your people be effective. Okay, thank you. So let me turn to some of the questions from Slido. There's one that's to John. I'm really keen to explore how to enhance industry-academia porosity you mentioned. Can you share your thoughts on how to make it happen? I think we talked a little bit about it, but anything else to add?
Yeah, no, we started to think about, for us, obviously, when it comes to research, access to equipment is one. So whether that's something we'd have in-house versus access to experts. So whether academia needs to come into industry in terms of just physical location or more movement. I think that would be one area. The other thing is around that constant dialogue around how industry is changing, what are those themes, what are those areas that the industry is interested in. I think the thing for us is, as a sort of a company that wants to bring technology to market, the days of having years and years PhD that don't deliver are kind of going. So I think really we're seeing now in a catalyst for growth is industry and academia together, bringing able to setting the brief of what is the research that we need that's going to hit the ground running in the next 2 to 3 years rather than the next 10 to 20. I think that changing that expectation of us being able to apply the research, and then the way at which I guess the teaching is done, I think that's very flexible. As you can see with the Dyson diet, bringing that in-house is one new way of thinking. Right? How could we upskill people and make them very relevant to the work they have to do at Dyson? And we thought bring them into Dyson. That's just one way. We've also worked in other ways with the universities when, for example, in Singapore, we have motor drives. So how do we get PhDs for the motor drive in SUTD so that we can end up having collaborations with university partners as well as doing our thing in-house.
Okay, great sharing. Thanks for all the ideas. Definitely something we'll take on board. Next question to Fionn. What would you say to your future self 20 years from now in the realm of the future of learning? Maybe not
20 years from now.
10 years.
The world is constantly evolving, and I think I constantly feel like I'm in this place where I feel like there's so much evolution, right? Like, I think when I first started workforce, computer is still a new thing, and then internet, and then Y2K, and then a whole series of things, and even pandemic. I don't know. The next 20 years is gonna be really interesting. Artificial intelligence, the whole of 3D printing, bringing reality in a virtual world, and I'm just excited to see how I am constantly gonna feel like I'm part of this change, and I'm excited to be in this journey. At the same time, I think I will tell myself, my 20-year-old self, not to sweat so much, to just, it's okay. Yeah, I feel like in my younger self, I feel like I was constantly stressed out. Feeling like I need to prove myself, feeling like I need to work harder, But I think in the current self, I would tell my past self, it's okay.
Thank you. I think that really resonates as well. John, what about you?
I think at the moment, we're kind of used to change at Dyson, right? That's the only thing which has been constant with working with James is that drive for change and improvement. I think now more than ever, we're looking to create those teams who can collaborate globally. So now's the right team to choose the team around you who are going to want to make more, transformational change rather than, now is the time for disruption. So I think for me, spreading that message and getting people to live that is kind of really my critical success factor. How do I do that with a team of 1,600 people who all need to be engaged on that, right? And some of that change will be seen to be positive, and there'll be exciting things, but equally you need to front into some of those more challenging, uncertain roles, and create that environment of trust, two-way dialogue, so that the things that are less exciting, more daunting, that we can have forums to talk about together as a team. I think that's the most important thing, is we front into the challenge together.
Actually, I would just add that I would say that relationships is so important. I think in the midst of where our work, success really comes about because of how everyone works together and help you to get to where you are. I was just, I had the great fortune of meeting Andy, who is in the crowd here today. Andy used to be my mentor, and I constantly tell him I'm so thankful that he's here today and that we continue to have a chance to keep in touch. Because it is the people that have believed in you, that has invested in you to help you get to where you are. And in the same way, it is how we constantly invest in our future generation to help them in their future, in how they contribute to the society as well. So I do think that in the midst of all the technology change, it boils down to how people work together.
Great, thank you. All right, I'll turn over now to questions from the audience. I think we've got one question.
Thank you for a very insightful discussion. I've got two questions, one for John, one for Fionn. Maybe I'll start with the engineer first. John, you mentioned that, or at least what Sir James Dyson mentioned, that you have a Dyson university that produces engineers. And 5 years ago, you have the first intake, and I'm sure you've got graduates now coming through. I'm sure they are well-trained, well-prepared for the work in Dyson. So how do you ensure that Dyson continues to have diversity in its engineers, that you do not just hire from Dyson University, and you are able to attract talents from other universities? Because other university grads may feel now that they will have an unfair position to apply for that job because they are not from Dyson University.
That's a very good point. Thank you for the question. So I think, obviously, when you have people that are very invested and they have a very high expectation, I think we get to the point where we as leaders and managers, we need to look into how the teams are run, and we make sure that the decisions we're making are based on potential and capability, not where people have come from. I think also around the world, we obviously have engineers produced in our Malmesbury campus. We see a huge amount of diversity of talent in lots of places around the world. So I think that really contributes to our products, because we want people who have more of a broader world perspective as well as different skill sets. And we see that through both getting university students from other places. So we want to keep on having both internal talent in terms of university talent and external talent. The challenge really becomes is how's that equitable when it comes into that? How do you not disadvantage the person who came from Singapore University compared to a Dyson thing? And I think really for us it's around the caliber of our managers being able to look into that future potential, talent map, look into those skill sets, because really a lot of it is around what you've done today in terms of what you've been able to do in reality, and that really determines your potential. The way you've approached problem solving and what you've achieved, it should set you up in the future for getting that progression. And I think that's what we see. And really the role comes down to our managers. How good are they at pushing people from different backgrounds in order to unlock the talent? Otherwise, we'll get to the point where we'll be looking in the past in terms of where people go into university. And I think we're looking for something more for the future in terms of contributing to a more diverse pool.
If I can just add to that, because there was a similar question here. So how does the Dyson University, what do you see as the impact or value it makes above and beyond the best engineering faculties of universities in the world? What's different?
So what's different?
What's different, or better?
I think I wouldn't say it was different and better. I think that the key thing for us is the reduction in the course time. So getting people to study in a course that's 3 years rather than 4. Also getting the teaching done by our experts on site. So it really is a very industry relevant skills that they're learning. They're using all of the tools and techniques we use to develop our products to do their degrees. So it gives us an accelerator in that respect. And we look to sort of use our setup of our company to allow those people then to experience different Dyson operations. So we've had people from the UK who've come over to Singapore and spent time in looking into our manufacturing and our supply chain, commercial business, all of these things. So giving that kind of experience. So we look to do that with the majority of our graduates in terms of giving them an early challenge. If you come to Dyson, you're not challenged, then that's a fault of your manager, because there's so much challenge out there that they haven't grasped it. And that's our job as leaders, is to make sure we're pushing the managers to accelerate the challenge put onto the individuals so they can demonstrate their skills.
Thank Thank you. Okay, back to you, Moon.
Sure. Thanks, John. Maybe you could start the university for managers then.
Exactly.
Fionn, LinkedIn is really a business platform for, I would say, matchmaking of employers with employees. It's been very successful, and I think many organizations uses it. I'd like to ask you your position on how do you have, if any, that on your own employees in using your platform, LinkedIn, and do you have any rules for them to use it on their personal basis? Because they are also employees looking to look at what the jobs available out there in the platform. And them being a LinkedIn employee using the same platform. So what's your position on that?
Yeah. So firstly, every employee is our members, and our key values within LinkedIn is what we call members first. So you are first a member, and we respect all our members on our platform. So we strongly encourage them to be their authentic self on the platform. And we also encourage them. In fact, every employees that join LinkedIn, the first culture boot camp that we talk about is our culture statement, which is what I mentioned earlier, which has an element of transformation. We do not believe that anyone who joins LinkedIn is going to stay in LinkedIn for life. In fact, we encourage transformation. So if you're looking for a job, we celebrate. We celebrate because it means you're transforming and you are going on to achieve great things. But of course, we hope that you stay. But if we are unable to keep you and we are unable to give you the right opportunities and we are unable to help you transform your career, then we celebrate your transformation. And that's what we do in LinkedIn. And we actually have a lot of what we call returning LinkedIn employees as well, because they have realized that, hey, LinkedIn is really, really an awesome place. So I would say that there's no difference. However, we do roll out our products to our employees first. Many a times we are our own guinea pigs, so we get to try new things.
Yeah, but great answer. I don't expect anything less from you. But I would say, wouldn't your employees, being an insider, have an unfair advantage in knowing what are the employers looking for? How do you control that? Because that's risky, because you are an insider, you get to know all the best jobs available.
I won't say that they get to see the best job, because all the jobs are actually posted on the platform. So I don't think there is any unfair advantages. If there are unfair advantages, I would say that all members have that advantage of understanding what are the skills that are in demand. If you are active on LinkedIn, you would actually know that what are the top critical skills. If you apply for this job, are you the top 10%? And if you are not, what are the skills that are you missing and that you should be acquiring? So those same functionalities is actually available for all members on the LinkedIn platform. I wouldn't say that our members or our employees has an unfair advantage. Is available for all members.
Okay, thanks for the question. Any other
Thanks for the
questions from the
question.
audience? Yep, one over there.
And probably at LinkedIn, similar. How do you deal with attrition and retention in what is a very competitive digital and engineering marketplace, not only in Singapore but globally?
Yeah, I think we kind of touch on the kind of nitty gritty. The IP is very important to us. Obviously, contractually, we expect the kind of highest levels in terms of confidentiality of our employees. So that's one of the things. I don't think that is a unique Dyson thing. If you want to work in new technology, you have to be aware that's what you're signing up for. So you're not telling your mum about what you're making. Or your friends, and that's just for me part of the course of innovation. I think in terms of attrition, obviously we see the kind of what you would normally expect in terms of a high challenge environment, and a high learning environment. I think driving that, so people get upskilled, look for more potential. The people who worked at Dyson are very employable, so we understand that as a risk. I think what we do about that really is around us as a leadership team offering that opportunity for growth. How do we give people different jobs in different areas? So can we move people around the business more? Can we also then change the scope of the roles? and can we get more engaging purpose in terms of what we ask people to do? That's really our focus in terms of how we retain people. I think you get to the point with having been on those Dyson missions doing their products, people want to have a break sometimes and do that, and that's sometimes right for them, allows new talent to come through, is one of the upsides. But obviously the knowledge retained in the business is really important for us and the confidentiality. So we're really kind of bridging those things. So we really want to focus on the carrot side of that in terms of keeping people engaged within the business and having the opportunity to ebb and flow in their careers. Sometimes you have huge amount of time you want to focus on work. Other times you want to be maybe building a family. We need to be very mindful of that as an employee to allow people to have that. And I think that's something we need to learn. We're very product focused. We could be a bit more human sometimes in terms of understanding that. That gives more opportunity potentially for women to join the organisation. If we to be leaders, we need to give them that flexibility. So I think we're finding our feet in that world to optimise the experience for people.
That's a really important question that a lot of organizations are, thinking about all the time. Great organizations keep great talent. In fact, our research shows that companies that provide growth and development opportunities, employees are likely to stay beyond 5 years, versus the ones that don't, they stay on average about 2 years. So it goes to show that companies that are really transforming their workplace into a learning workplace, providing growth and development opportunities for people, they tend to stay in the organizations for a far longer time. So companies like LinkedIn focus a lot on that. We want to provide internal mobility opportunities for our people so that they can just be able to create, do different jobs that fits to their aspiration. I think that's one. The second area is actually our culture. I think culture plays a huge role. Like I mentioned earlier, people come to work not just for work itself. People come to work because when you can actually do work with friends, work doesn't feel like work anymore. So culture plays a huge role, and leaders who are very conscious about creating that culture for people to want to come to work and delight in their work has a much higher engagement in a workplace, and attrition tends to be lower. And lastly, we really do hold our leaders accountable in terms of how they model that behavior. As our panelists talked about earlier, it's very often that we have what we call the performance review. The employers, the bosses give performance review to their staff. But actually, in LinkedIn, we equally have that on a quarterly basis as well. It's what we call the employee voice survey. The employees are giving feedback about their managers. And we do take all this feedback very seriously, and we look at how the employees are feeling. Are they intending to stay? How happy are they at work? And we ask them questions, and we actually have action items to address those things. So we are very conscious that these are the things that makes our employees want to stay in LinkedIn.
Well, I think, sorry, just to add on that, made me think of, when you join a company, being very clear about its values and the way of working really helps you to get that engagement. I think that's more important than ever in terms of the expectation the company sets. Is that something you're really going to thrive in? I think that's a big part of the onboarding, stroke the continual engagement is continually having reinforcement through the values and the mission of the company. Otherwise, you might be a round peg in a square hole. So it just doesn't work. And I think really that cultural fit is really important. You're choosing companies now based on the culture and what they stand for, rather than sometimes the position. I think that's an important factor.
Actually, I read this verse the other day. It says, passion is what gets you out of bed. Purpose is how you put your passion to contribute. And that purpose is what a lot of what people are looking for as well. They don't want to just come to work without knowing the bigger meaning of what they are working for.
Okay, so I think wonderful, engaging dialogue. I think in the interest of time, we have to close this up. And it's such a great way to close the discussion by going round to where we started, which is purpose. I think we've heard so much today in terms of lifelong learning. We all know we've heard about how work is going to be disrupted, and great ideas from this panel about how we can learn university, on the job, formally, informally, as well as create that culture that supports learning on the job. So I hope we've taken a lot away today. I certainly have, not just for SIM, but personally, and there's some actions that I'm going to be putting in place, and I can see Chen Xiong looking at me because I know he's going to follow up. So I think let's thank both our panelists for your wonderful time and insights today. Thank you.